Hello, it's already week 8. I can't believe it. The time is flying by really, really fast. I hope you've all enjoyed your lesson from last week. I can see the work that you have done and the tasks that have been submitted have been fantastic. I was really, really glad to see all the work that you've done. And I have to say, I'm very impressed with your abilities to use iPads and technology. It's amazing. You're just all so good at it. But this week, we're moving on a little bit. We're still focusing on bridges. We're just going to be building another level of our knowledge. And we also get to start our little project, which will go on from this week onto next week, and I'm pretty sure the week after that. So that's really exciting. I hope you all guys have fun, and here we go. Okay, so we're going to go over what we already know about bridges. We already know that bridges are freestanding. They have to be able to stand on their own. No one's there holding them. We know that they're super, super, super strong and that their strength depends on who or what uses the deck. So if it's people, then it might not be as strong as the bridges that are used for cars and trucks. We also know that their strength comes from the material that is used to make them. So is it wood, is it steel, metal? And it comes from the shapes that are used to build them. We know that this is that's right, it's a truss bridge. We also know that this is a suspension bridge. Great, good job. And this one is a beam bridge. Well done. And lucky last, this one is an arch bridge. Good job. The task that you did at the end of the science lesson last week, I'm sure you all noticed that nearly all the bridges that you saw had triangles in them. And this is because they're one of the strongest shapes to build things with. And that is because when you take a triangle and you squeeze it, it actually doesn't fold or collapse like other shapes. To show you this, I've grabbed some of the paper rolls that you did with Mr. Price, and I hope you're still making, because I've made hoops, and you're going to need, I think Mr. Price said at least 50 for a project that's coming up. So keep rolling those. I've already made a triangle out of one of mine, got a rectangle and a square. So what I wanted to show you was that when you take your triangle and you press down on it, I'm pressing quite hard, it's not collapsing. And then if I take the square that I've made and press on it really hard, see how it collapses? And the same thing happens if you take your rectangle and do the same thing. Oop, that one's completely snapped. So feel free to try that at home, making different shapes and squeezing them. The reason the triangle is so good is because when there's force that's coming from the top, it's spread out between both sides onto the bottom, so it doesn't collapse. Whereas with the square, it doesn't spread out, it just stays in one area, and that's why it collapses. And the same thing happens with your rectangle as well. We've done a little recap and we've understood why triangles are so strong and why we see them in construction all the time, especially bridges. Now I would like to introduce you to some stories or reasons why some bridges are built. There's always a reason. Like we said, they're problem solvers. They're solving a problem that has occurred, whether people want to get from one side to another or they want to save some time in their travelling. So these 3 bridges I chose because they had some very interesting stories. So this first one, the one that we're looking at right now, is one of the vine bridges in Japan. Now these bridges were built over 100 years ago, and back then there were 13 of them built. Now there are only currently 3. And because they're made out of vines, as you can see, because it's a natural material, they will deteriorate, they will decompose, so they have to be remade every 3 years. Now, these bridges, as you can see, go across the river, and they were built to help people go from one side of the river to the other. However, they were also built with vines because that was what was available in the area, and also because it was so easy to break the bridges down. Now I know you're wondering, why would you want to break a bridge down? And in this circumstance, it actually was used as a protection method. So when people on one side of the bridge wanted to be protected from anyone attacking them from the other side, they could cut the bridge down and the river would act as a natural defense system for them. So this bridge is so impressive because it's nearly 13 kilometers long. It's the Confederation Bridge in Canada, and the reason it was built was because they wanted to get from New Brunswick to Prince Edward Island without having to go by boat. So you can see that it goes across the ocean, and it is so long. I think this image is an even better representation of how long it is. Look at that. So one side is New Brunswick and the other side is Prince Edward Island. The last bridge I wanted to show you was the Husseini Hanging Bridge, which is found in Pakistan. And as you can see, it looks a bit old and rickety, and it has been made with very few materials, which is mainly because there weren't very many materials available, and still aren't very many materials available in that area for people to make the bridge with. As you can see, there is an old bridge next to it that's falling apart. It's a bit scary. So they do make new ones when they can and when they have the materials. There we go, it's stretching right across the river. So this bridge was built to help people in a smaller town in Pakistan access the larger towns across the other side of the mountain range and the river. And by adding this bridge, they actually cut off nearly 2 hours in their journey time. So if there wasn't a bridge, they would be spending over 2 hours walking from one place to the next. So there's some reasons why people have built bridges. They're the settings for their bridges. Okay, so the design brief. Here it is. A design brief is like a set of instructions that you need to follow when you're building your bridge. So it's similar to anything that you might be given in class, any step-by-step instructions that you've done before, or when you follow a recipe, when you're cooking a cake. It's very similar, but because it's a bridge, it's a little bit different. So the first thing that we have is it needs to be at least 30 centimeters long. So you can find a way to measure that. Just when you're building, keep that in mind. And keep that in mind when you're building your setting as well. That'll be something you need to think about. The second thing is it needs to be strong enough to hold 2 apples or 2 bananas or 2 oranges, whatever you have at home. 2 of a certain kind of fruit will be fine. We also need you to use some of your newspaper rolls. So you've been making heaps of those, I'm sure, since the last science lesson with Mr. Price, and now it's time to use those. There is not a limit to how many you can use, just think about how they can be incorporated, how they can be used in your building of your bridge. Then it must fit into the setting and the story that you've created. So it needs to be relevant to the story that you invent and the setting you do today. And finally, it must be freestanding. So when you're measuring it and when it's got the apples on top, you can't be holding it to help it stay up. So it needs to be built so that you don't touch it when you're measuring it and when you're putting your apples on. So again, we're not making the bridges today, it's just the setting, but I wanted you to see the design brief or the set of instructions just so you could get your head around what's going on, and it'll help you understand the setting as well. I have to apologise. I forgot to film myself making my setting, which is mainly due to the fact that I got really excited about it and started making it. And it wasn't until I'd finished it and was letting it dry that I realised I hadn't filmed quite a big part of it. So I hope you can all use your imagination to make your own settings, which is part of the project anyway. However, I did want to show you this setting that I have completed, and I have decided to make 2 mountains. Two. And as you can see, I've used paper mache. Very handy craft we learned last week. And I'm going to be putting a river down the middle, and I will have my bridge going across the 2 mountains. And the story that's going with my setting is that there is a little village on one mountain, and that little village happens to have their school on the other side, which is a little bit impractical, let's be honest. So rather than having the kids every day walk down this mountain, get across the river, and then back up this mountain, I've decided that I'm going to build them a bridge. I haven't quite decided what kind of bridge or how it will look, but I know, thanks to my setting and my design brief for the bridge, that it needs to be 30 centimetres long. And when I was making my setting, I made sure that the distance between the 2 mountaintops was 30 centimetres. So that's why we wanted to show you the design brief before you started making your setting. I also decided to make mine with paper mache because that's what I had on hand. I have unfortunately not kept any of my childhood toys and stacks of Lego from when I was little, so I don't have anything else at home besides books and a bunny rabbit, but I didn't think that would really work. So I decided to stick with paper mache. You guys don't have to use paper mache, of course, you can use whatever you like. I know there's a lot of students in F24 that love Lego and have heaps of Lego, so maybe you'd like to incorporate that into what you're doing. I would also recommend that it's done on something hard, so a piece of cardboard, mainly so that you can pick it up and move it around and it's not in the way at home. So you're not doing your setting in the hallway at the front door where someone's going to trip over it, or on your dining room table where you eat every night. So I think that's covered everything. I will show you what it looks like when I've painted it and decorated it a bit. As you can see, it's a bit boring. Otherwise, good luck everyone. Oh, thanks Coco. So here is my finished scene. I have decided to put a river through the middle. I've got my mountaintop with a school. Here we go. And I've got my mountaintop with the village. And I've also double checked because I know that my bridge needs to be 30 centimetres long. Oh, here she comes. Coming to double check for us. I've double checked that between this point and this point, there is 30 centimetres. Coco's a little bit longer than 30 centimetres, but you'll have to find a way to measure that out. I'm really excited to see what you all come up with this week. Make sure that you pop it on Seesaw for me and your other teachers to have a look at. Otherwise, have fun!